Hi there. So I have a question for you. What constitutes life? Is it the physical body? Is it the beating heart? Is it the working digestive system? Is it the brain? Is it all physical, or is it something more? Is it the consciousness? What makes you you? I know the frontal lobe and all the brain stuff, I get that, but what makes you have the sense of humor that you have? Neuroscientists would say that there's, parts of the brain that do it, and it's all neurological, but the brain is such a complex machine that we still don't understand. What makes some brains perfect and some brains not perfect, sorry. What makes some brains function in ways that others don't? Now let me ask you a different question. What would you do to be with somebody that you've lost? A loved one, a father, a brother, a sister, a mother, a wife, a kid. We've all lost people that we miss dearly. And at that time of loss, we go through the 7 stages of grief. Or 5, I don't remember. But at some point, we start bargaining and we beg God for another chance to be with our loved one, even for just an hour. Sometimes we even dream about it. But what if that was possible? Science is on the verge of technology that would allow you to download your consciousness to a cloud somewhere. And when I say consciousness, I don't just mean like, I can surf the web in my mind. No, I mean everything that makes you you would be backed up on a hard drive somewhere, so that if you were to die, there would be a computer program that would have all of your memories up until that point and have sufficient AI to continue based on who you were and essentially keep your consciousness alive. But the question is, at what point does it cease being your actual consciousness and start being a computer program? Is it a copy of your consciousness, or is it your actual consciousness? So this all seems deep and weird and irrelevant, especially for a channel like the Soapbox. But before this was the Soapbox, it was a channel called Unpublished. And my buddy Carl Gianetto and I would take turns shooting short videos, less than 5 minutes, and they were completely unfiltered, completely unedited, and we would continue each other's story. And it was a lot of fun until we became uninspired and it wasn't fun anymore, and the story just stopped. And so he said, I told him about the idea for the Soapbox, and he said, yeah, you can have Unpublished. So I turned it into this. And I know you're probably thinking, God, all of this is irrelevant. What the hell is he talking about? Well, the answer is telling stories. If you have a voice and you're getting your message out there, all you're really doing is telling stories of what your message is. And I have actually self-published 2 books. One was called The Hunger, the other was called Happiness Is. I'm not sure if either of them are still available. I know that The Hunger got the rough draft published on accident, and they were going to charge me a boatload to fix it. So if you ever buy it, you're going to get a really crappy book because it's not what was intended for the public. But I digress. My point is, I've been a writer in my many, many talents and my many weird things that I can do. And I used to write horror, a lot of horror. But my daughter and I was joking around with her on the way to school this morning, and I was acting like a robot. And she said, she goes, "Oh, you're Robo Dad now?" And just that word, Robo Dad, triggered something. It triggered a story in my mind, and I thought, what if? And it was the same, you write what you know. As a writer of comedy, as a writer of horror, as a writer of magic tricks, whatever. You write what you know, right? So I know I have a 10-year-old daughter, a 3-year-old son, and a wife, and a cat, and friends, right? So in my mind, this whole story unfolded, and it was, my character, who would be the Robo-Dad, surprise, gets into a horrible car crash. And the wife, while he's on life support, is faced with the tough choice: do I pull the plug? Do I keep him on? Now, if you're married, or even in a very serious relationship, you've had this conversation. If not, you definitely should. But it's, what do you do if your spouse is on life support and you have to decide whether or not to pull the plug? And that's when you're asking yourself the questions that I mentioned at the top of this video, like, what makes you you? What constitutes being human? What constitutes your consciousness? Like what is it that makes you you? And if you can have a physical body there, but none of the personality and no way to interact with them, it's just their physical presence, is it really them? Is it really what they would want? All that stuff. So, in my head, in the story, the wife is going through all these thoughts, and she essentially has as much time as she needs, but the longer that he's on the machines, the more likely it is that he'll become brain dead, essentially. And when you're brain dead, there's no coming back. That's what they say. Like I said, the brain is an amazing and a powerful machine and has the ability to heal itself in a lot of cases, but once you're brain dead, game over. So in my story, she receives a phone call from a program at a university called Neo-Life. Neo means new. And it says that while he was in college, her husband had signed up for this program, that if she consented, everything that made him him, as long as he wasn't too severely brain damaged, everything that made him him could be downloaded into a hyper-realistic android that looked exactly like him. That, even I'm chunky and overweight, so it could even have that, my blemish, all the things all my imperfections would be physically present. And it's the most top-of-the-line advanced computer system on the planet, and it, warms the skin so it feels warm to the touch. And so they could put my memories all the way up until the accident or my character's memories, into this android, and I could continue to live. My kids would get another chance with me. She would get to continue her life with me. Now, the downside is that I would age, but I wouldn't age at the same rate as they would, so they would get older than me faster than me. But it is me, it's my consciousness, right? So my personality. So in my mind, I thought, would she do that? And what would my kids say? So I asked Kayla. I said, what is it or what would you want to do? And she said, well, if it's still you, I would want that to happen. I would want to be with you. I would want, it doesn't matter if you're a machine, it's your personality that makes you who you are. And I went, okay. So I thought about what my wife would say. And I remember distinctly in real life very vividly having this conversation. And she asked me, what would you want? And I said, if I'm on life support and there's any chance that I could come back, pardon me, I could come back and be me, then do it. Take that opportunity. So in my story, the character would remember that, and she would agree. She'd call the guy back, and she'd say, "I want him back. What are the downsides? What's going on? And he'd say, well, there's a little bit slower aging, but other than that, and you have to bring him in every 6 months to a year, so that we can do diagnostic checks and make sure that all of his systems are running properly. But other than that, and you can't ever tell anyone, because this is a prototype program, and we're going to do it for you for free since he signed up as a volunteer, and you just can't tell anybody." So he shows up with a contract, and she has to sign it, and the contract basically states that if the program doesn't work and they download the consciousness but it doesn't take, it's not their fault. They can't be held liable. All the legal jargon. They can't tell the press. They can't tell anybody about it. And essentially what would happen is they would go to the hospital, download my consciousness, and replace my corpse with this android, and I would wake up. And so to the rest of the world, I never would have died, because technically I wouldn't have. My brain never would have shut off. Now, the physical brain would have shut off, the computer program not so much. Now, I want to be clear, if I were to write this story, it would not be a horror story. It would probably obviously be science fiction, but it might actually be comedy. I know this has sounded pretty deep and pretty dark, but I like the idea that when they get home, he has some enhanced abilities. So, for example, he is a little bit faster. Not a little. He's a lot faster, and he's infinitely stronger. And so the kids are like, "Hey, Dad, can we build a treehouse at some point?" And the daughter draws up a picture of a treehouse, and he's like, "Sure, honey." And then he runs to the lumber yard and he gets and within like 5 minutes, he's built this big treehouse mansion. The wife says, "Can you run to the store and pick up some milk tonight?" And so he just kind of blinks, connects to the internet, and downloads the shopping list that she had saved or something like that, and orders it online, and it gets delivered later that night. Like, I kind of like the idea of some crazy antics that would make it a Robo Dad situation. But I think that what was weird is, as I was thinking about that and the antics of that, here's where it gets kind of deeper and more interesting, in my opinion, is, okay, so what happens if, since it would take, obviously, if when it's time for the rest of my family to go, if they uploaded their consciousness as well, and our whole family was robotic at that point, were androids at that point, and, you know, for society as a whole, what would that mean? Because eventually we wouldn't be able to reproduce, right? We wouldn't have that. I mean, obviously a robot can't reproduce in that manner. So if you were able to upload your consciousness when it was time to go, and you met certain criteria as far as like health and that sort of thing, the whole world would eventually, the entire human population would be replaced over a couple of generations, possibly, by these androids. And, you know, you'd never grow tired. You'd never, you could be, your skin could actually be like solar panels or whatever. So you are powered by solar. And so it's all very, very interesting stuff. But I was thinking about that, and I thought, well, if we're uploading our consciousness and it is our personality, then basically all we would be doing is prolonging the life of those. I mean, all of our problems would still exist. There'd still be climate change deniers. There'd still be racism. There'd still be bigotry, because that's problems that we have with our personality. That's not physical problems. That's not these machines that are breaking down. When I was a kid, you know, I was raised Catholic, and if you're Catholic or even Christian in any way, shape, or form, you understand that the whole idea is that your spirit, your soul, goes to heaven, and if you've accepted Christ, you're saved. Well, when I was a kid, I had this conversation with my cousin, Zach, and he was talking about how sometimes he thinks that maybe we are just vehicles, like our personality. And he was like 5 at the time, so this is a really deep thought for a kid to have. But he thought, what if our personality is just a vehicle, and our bodies are like cars, and the cars get older and break down, and eventually, after it's completely broken down, and our soul has grown and learned, it moves on to a new vehicle. And he was raised Catholic as well, so the idea that he was talking about was reincarnation. And I thought, wow, that's really deep for a kid. But it's the same kind of thought process that I'm having here in this little vlog here. Is, you know, what happens if you if everybody uploads their consciousness, then eventually the human race is no more. But you could upload the consciousness of not just great people who want to save the planet, but the people who aren't so great as well. So it's interesting. And you know, eventually it would become a power thing. Only the rich and the ruling class elite would be able to have this procedure done. And, you know, we'd still have a class system. You'd still have a currency system. Like all the things, because it's not necessarily, that's why I was like, okay, so is it artificial intelligence or is it my actual consciousness? Because if it's not, how do I say this? If it's not artificial intelligence that has the ability to pre-construct events and think advanced in the future of how things are going and what's going to happen, then you have the same narrow-minded, short-sighted human nature that we have now, which means we'll have the same problems that we have now, which means that the world could come, you know, to an end, whatever. So major scientists like Elon Musk, and I believe Stephen Hawking believed in this in a big way. They do believe in the idea of this. This isn't an original idea of uploading your consciousness to a computer, but I think that the moral and ethical questions that go with it make you really ponder: is it worth it? to do this? Is it worth it to extend your life beyond your expiration period, specifically so that you can spend time with the ones you love and they can get more time with you? And would there be a way that you could shut down the program and end your life? Or even here's the real ethical question. This is where it gets really kind of crazy. So, what's to stop you from doing this when you're alive and well? So, for example, I'm 37 now, right? I wouldn't say I'm in the prime of my life, but I feel pretty darn good, right? And my wife is the same age right now. And, she's been a nurse for many years, so she doesn't, her physical body is often very sore because she's working these long shifts, and she has for over a decade and a half. And so, it makes us wonder, what if it's all downhill from here, then what's stopping us, if this technology existed, from uploading it now, from going in and saying, okay, I want to stay the same age as my husband for eternity. So let's do this now. Put me into a medically induced coma and let's transfer my consciousness now. Is there an ethical problem with that? So I know this is all kind of crazy. Oh, hi. This is all kind of crazy, and I know that it's really deep and really weird. And the whole point of it was just to kind of get this idea for a story onto a video so I didn't forget it, because it came to me while I was driving, and I can't write while I was driving, and I knew it wasn't safe to sit here and hold the camera, so I mounted it and I recorded it. And I'm going to post it to the internet. I would love to hear your thoughts. This is copyright, trademark as of today. So yeah, don't steal the idea, but I would love to hear your feedback. I think it's a really unique idea. I think, and even if it's not unique, I think it's definitely an intriguing idea. So let me know what you think in the comments below, or make a response video, and I will link to it or do what I can. So yeah, I guess the real question is, what would you do to live forever and be with your family forever? And would it be worth it? So, hey, I'm going to step off the soapbox today. Thank you very much for tuning in. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to myself, and I really hope that more than 2 or 3 people see this. Like, subscribe, share, all that fun crap. And I will catch you next time I am on the soapbox.